Let's get straight on to that story now about the G7, and it's unveiled the US-led plans to counter China and infrastructure funding for poorer nations. They've also announced a new accord to battle future pandemics. President Cyril Ramaphosa is among world leaders gathered at the summit in Cornwell in the United Kingdom. Our correspondent Benji Hyer joins me now from there. Benji, so that's good news, isn't it? The fact that they've come up with an accord to battle the virus, the pandemic. How's it going to work?
That's right, hoping to get all the countries on board with this Carbis Bay Declaration. And it's no surprise that COVID-19 has been at the forefront of the G7 summit here in Cornwall. Obviously, the pandemic at the central part of our lives for the past year or so. And so this declaration is supposed to learn from that pandemic and make sure that all the countries, the leading countries, can battle any future pandemics and make sure that something on this scale doesn't happen again. Amid all this, obviously, South Africa have also been pushing for intellectual property rights on vaccines to be waived. That is to say that if a country is finding it difficult to manufacture or access vaccines, they can do so quicker and easier. And actually there was a development today on that with Joe Biden backing Cyril Ramaphosa's plan, according to the president's Twitter page at least. And therefore progress being made on that front, and also in one other major initiative, the US-backed the US-backed Build Back Better World project is a bit of a mouthful, but essentially what it means is that these G7 countries are trying to create a rival project to China's Belt and Road Initiative. That's the program that helps fund transport infrastructure in countries around the world. And the G7 alternative would essentially try to do the same in lower and middle income countries. And so that is the aim of the leaders here. But of course, still many questions about that as to how it would be funded, and more details are expected in exactly the targeted nations and how that financing would be spread.
So obviously a large focus, and it's understandable, is on the pandemic, but are things being left behind? We know that other issues were touched on: education, climate change and the world economy. Any movement there?
That's right, indeed. And actually, the last one of those, the climate change, being a real topic of debate tomorrow, and in good timing as well, given the fact that there's been large-scale protests once more here in Cornwall. A wave of protests, you could say, with people heading out to sea on their paddleboards to try to sort of turn the tide on the discourse around climate change. Now, of course, leaders are going to address this, as I say, tomorrow, and leading environmentalist and broadcaster David Attenborough will be attending virtually for his say on that. But campaigners definitely pushing for further progress, and we'll see at that kind of session, that press conference tomorrow afternoon, exactly what leaders have promised in that regard.
All right, Benji, we shall talk to you again tomorrow. Thank you very much for that.